Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show. Today is Friday, April 9th, 2021. Great to have everybody back with us, those of you who are back with us. And it's an unusual day for us to do an Ed Morrissey Show. But joining me today is the man we had to bump from Monday because things got a little hectic around the Morrissey household on Monday. AJ Kaufman of alphanews.org. alphanews.org. Now, that used to be alphanewsmn.com. Now it's alphanews.org. And, of course, a lot of focus here in Minnesota, but AJ has a national and international focus, so he's kind of a generalist like me and looking at everything and doing stuff on the local scene, doing stuff on the national scene, and as always, great to have AJ with us. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Ed. I am a generalist. I like that. Generalist, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm a generalist too. You know, I'm interested in a number of topics, and I follow a number of different things. And sometimes I like data geeky stuff, and sometimes I'm clickbaity. I don't know, data geeky, clickbaity, somewhere in between. That's where I'm at, and covering sort of the national beat more than anything else. So plenty of stuff to talk about today. First off, I guess we can start, AJ, with Prince Philip passing away at the age of 99. That is a man who lived a good long life.
99, I'll say. He was going to be 100, I think, in June. And if anyone's watched The Crown, as I have, and maybe you have too, Ed.
I have.
I learned a lot about him there, but I also have read a lot. You know, his background's fascinating, being born on an island off the coast of Greece, part of Greece. His uncle was forced to abdicate when he was young. Family went to Paris, and then he went to England when he was, 6 or 7. Went to school there and in Scotland, and then joined the Navy, saw action in World War II all across the Mediterranean theater, and was apparently in Tokyo Bay when the Japanese surrendered, which I didn't know until I read today. That was not covered in The Crown.
No, it wasn't.
But married for 74 years. So, man, you and I have a long way to catch up to him on that. I don't know if we'll make it.
I'm creeping up on him. I'm 27. So
I'm about halfway to you. We're getting toward 12 or 13. I have to remember that.
There you go. So, yeah, I mean, fascinating guy. This is a guy who served his country for a very long time. And, you know, the monarchy is not one of my favorite institutions. Then again, I'm not a British subject. You know, I'm American citizen.
Not anymore.
So I'm, yeah, right. So, you know, it's neither here nor there for me personally. I just think it's a little bit anachronistic, but even though it's anachronistic, you have to look at Prince Philip's life and say, this is a man who really fulfilled his duties as, I think, to the best of his abilities. I think he was constantly focused on those duties. And I think he really, even if you're not crazy about the institution itself, I think you have to say that Prince Philip was a guy who really gave it his all and really dedicated himself to it.
Yeah, I don't know how many people actually knew much about him before The Crown in some ways, to be honest, in the U.S., because, you know, being a spouse of a monarch, it's a little different than being part of the royal family by blood, right?
Right.
So
yeah. He was a consort. He was the Queen's consort. I mean, he was the Duke of Edinburgh. He was a duke, but he was the Duke of Edinburgh. But he was the consort. He was not co-regnant. And that was an issue at one point. If you watch The Crown, or if you read a little history, apparently that was an issue at one point. So was the names of the children, because and that came up. And they had to come up with a compromise on that, because he was pretty offended that his children weren't getting his name, and so they came up with a compromise for that. This is a guy, though, who, you know, again, I think if you look at people who served their country, even if you're not crazy about the institution that they were serving, he dedicated his entire life to this. His entire adult life was dedicated to this institution and to his wife, which I think is not just laudable but charming. You know, that to me that speaks volumes about the guy.
Yeah, dedicated to his wife, and I think to his kids. I think I read a few times that he had quite an active role in his children's lives, which for someone born in 1921, you know, and the kids growing up in the 40s and 50s, that was rare for a dad to have such an active role in his children's lives. And he also was involved in a groundbreaking television documentary. I think it was 68 or 69, right around the moon landing. During that time, he did televised interviews. That was the first time a royal had done that.
Yep.
He was involved with his wife's queen's coronation, so to speak. But I don't think he'd been in the public for a few years now. Obviously, almost 100 years old, and rest in peace. It's I think I read that William, his grandson, had said something along the lines of, "My grandfather was blunt, and he told me things I didn't want to hear, and he didn't care if I got upset about it." And that's a very old school thing today, I guess. But I think it's probably an idea that really could use a comeback in some respects.
Well, yeah, I think that there's a whole lot of people in recent generations who feel like it's a right to not be offended. But at any rate, just wanted to mention this because it's a big deal. It's very much a passing of an era here. Let's also talk about this particular era. I was just looking on Twitter right before we went on the air, and I mentioned it to you, that Matt Gaetz and Tom Reed now are the subjects of a House Ethics Committee investigations, 2 investigations, I should say. One into Representative Tom Reed, the other into Matt Gaetz. We haven't heard a lot about the Reed issue. Matt Gaetz is the one that we're mostly focusing on here. Not a surprise. I mean, based on the stuff that's been alleged, that's been coming out, especially the stuff that came out at the Daily Beast last night, I predicted this morning this is going to be the subject of House Ethics Committee investigation, even if it doesn't rise to really criminal behavior. The stuff that's coming out right now is going to be an issue. They're going to want to take a look into it. And sure enough, today they announced that they're going to open this probe.
Yeah. Do you think that that's why he was looking to go to Newsmax as soon as possible because of what was coming down the pike? It seems Matt Gaetz has always been a guy who his mentality, I think, as a congressman for what has been 4 years, 6 years, has been to get on cable news as much as possible. It's sort of the newfound way of being a politician where you hire a big PR staff, if you will, or a comm staff, I guess, and you look at the news each morning and you find out what the hot topics are and you make sure you get on Hannity or Lou Dobbs that evening rather than legislating. And, even though I lean right politically, I think Matt Gaetz, much like people on the other side that are his equal, like AOC and Ilhan Omar, I think these people represent all that's wrong with politics these days. Right. Trying to just basically be on TV, fight, but not really fighting because they're fighting by talking to people that agree with them and not doing much as a congressman. And of course, the epitome or the nadir of his career, in my opinion, was when he jetted from Florida or DC or whatever to Cheyenne to hold a rally in the middle of winter. And we talked about this back when it happened, I think.
Yes, we did.
Against Liz Cheney, one of the House leaders, who, whatever you think of her, does not deserve to be mocked in her home state by some carpetbagger, would you say, who's never been to Wyoming, who goes there and holds a rally in front of the Capitol and talks about how bad she is and how much better for the state Matt Gaetz would be or something. And that was really appalling to me. And that's pretty much where I lost any shred of respect that I had for him as a conservative.
Well, it's a dumb move because now that this is in a House ethics probe, I mean, the output of a House ethics probe can be one of a range of things. This may not even be his biggest issue at the moment, of course, because reportedly there's a Department of Justice investigation into whether or not he paid for travel expenses for one or more underage girls to have sex with them. Now, this particular allegation from the Daily Beast, the girl in question is 18 years of age, right? Or was at the time 18 years of age. She might be older now. Well, she definitely would be older now, but at that time was 18 years of age. So you don't have the underage element in this particular story. And I'm wondering if that is actually something that was misreported right from the get-go. And this is one of the things I've been talking about. I'm not a big fan of Matt Gaetz either, and that was a real jerk move that he did in Cheyenne. But I'm always suspicious about leaks from Department of Justice investigations, especially about people who are politically controversial, because to me, the Department of Justice is not supposed to leak any of this stuff. And based on the original reporting from the New York Times, it didn't even look like it was coming from the Department of Justice. It looked like it was coming from somebody who was just aware of what was going on at the Department of Justice, which makes me even more curious as to what the leak is and what the purpose is. Now, the Daily Beast today, last night, their article said that they themselves saw the Venmo receipts and the different emails going back and forth, and said that the communication from Gates had this girl's name on it. Young lady. She was 18 years of age. And so, if that's true, and if that's eventually validated, that's the type of thing that, even if it's not technically illegal, the House Ethics Committee is going to be involved in it. And when you set out to piss off half of your own caucus by campaigning against one of its leadership, you are going to reap the whirlwind at some point in time, and by golly, that time is going to be, there's this line in the movie Bruce Almighty. Did you ever see the movie with Jim Carrey?
Yeah, many years ago. I probably can't remember the line you're going to cite, though.
So, he's confronting these guys who beat him up earlier, and says, give me what, and he wants an apology, and the guy says, you'll get your apology the day a monkey flies out of my butt, and they're all laughing, and Jim Carrey says, what a coincidence, because that's today. And then the monkey comes flying out of his butt, and hilarity ensues. And, well, this is, it looks like the monkey isn't quite flying out of Matt Gaetz's butt yet, but my guess is that that moment is coming soon here with this House ethics probe.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the quickest and easiest thing for him to do might be to just resign, and I wouldn't be totally surprised if he resigned next week.
I don't see him resigning, though. I don't see him resigning. I think he's too. I think he's.
Well, he's got an ego. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I might even deem him a megalomaniac, the way he acts on cable news and some of his rants. And I think it's best for the party if he goes away. And, he was going to challenge Marco Rubio for Senate in Florida, but decided not to do that about a month or two ago.
Right, and you notice that Trump endorsed Rubio today too, right?
He did. That's what got me thinking about it. I wonder if Trump would have endorsed if he had primaried him. But Gaetz is probably not electable anyway statewide, because not just his politics being, I don't mind him being to the right, far right even, but there's not a lot of substance behind it. He seems to, again, he pops up on every cable news show with his big hair, and people might like that. And he goes to Cheyenne and gets a couple hundred people. But I would like him to resign. I think it's bad for the party. I think just like we got rid of Steve King, we've got a few other people in Congress. MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene would be someone I wouldn't mind seeing go away. Now the left, obviously, it has not. I don't think they police their people as well, and obviously there's 5 or 6 Congress women and men there who have no business being in their jobs, but they're not. None of them are going anywhere. In fact, they're superstars. Whereas I don't think that Gaetz and Greene and Lauren Boebert and Steve King were superstars in the GOP, and that's kind of why I think there's a difference in the two parties, and that's a whole different discussion. But
I think you're right about this. I mean. There is this split in the House caucus. I suspect that this is not going to help the more MAGA caucus in the House if this happens with Matt Gaetz. I mean, and again, this is one of the reasons why I was a little, always, I don't want to say suspicious, but I'm always skeptical when we don't see evidence. And I think over the last 3 or 4 years, right, 5 years, we've had so many people come on and claim that they've had evidence of something, only to find out that they didn't have
nothing.
Jack on this. And I mean, you can go from Russiagate to Stop the Steal, the Kraken, Michael Avenatti, and that whole thing with Brett Kavanaugh.
Harry Reid saying that Mitt Romney didn't pay his taxes.
Harry Reid saying Mitt Romney didn't pay his taxes. Absolutely. So
it comes to mind right away.
That's 9 years ago. And what's his name in the House? Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff for 2 years said he had the evidence that Trump was colluding with Russian intelligence, and it turned out he didn't have jack squat. And so until I see things in court presented as evidence and where you can actually peruse what it is that they claim that they've got, I'm always a little skeptical of these claims. And so, Matt Gaetz says he didn't do it. The women in his office all signed a letter yesterday saying he's been very professional, very supportive of us. He's never exhibited any predatory
Both
behavior.
can be true.
Right. It could, and they both could be true. It might be that he was smart enough to, stay clean around the office, but dumb enough to leave his name on on paper trails and money trails with his friend Joel Greenberg. I mean, if that's on the level, if what the Daily Beast is reporting is on the level, that's pretty stupid. I mean, that's not right at all.
And he's had some staffers that have resigned, so that
just recently he has, yeah. Just recently he has. You're right, and so so that's the what do I want to say? That's sort of the upshot of what I see in this is just I haven't seen the evidence, but there's starting to be a lot of smoke that's looking darker and darker. Here. And while we haven't seen the fire yet, there's something going on here, and I think that this House Ethics Committee probe is going to be problematic because House Ethics doesn't have to rely on whether something's illegal as long as it broke House rules or crossed House ethics lines. They can recommend whatever, right? Up to and including expulsion, which takes 2/3 of the House to succeed at. But after Matt Gaetz, and the Liz Cheney thing, you might have half of the Republicans in that caucus ready to throw them out.
Kinzinger is out there talking about it, and I get emails from Matt Gaetz all the time saying Adam Kinzinger is a traitor to the GOP. So I'm sure Adam Kinzinger is not a fan of Matt Gaetz.
No, he declared last night that Gaetz should resign after. Yep.
Yeah, and I would think 2/3 of the House. You're talking, that's 300 something. You're going to need about 100. Well, not quite, about 80 Republicans. Might be tough, but I don't know if it'll come to that. It'll get outsized attention from the media too because it's a Republican and an outspoken Republican. But like I said, I'm not a fan of his anyway, and I think we'd be better off with someone else in that seat.
Yes, I think we'd be better off with somebody else in that seat. Just depending, you never know who you're going to get. I think that was going to happen anyway, though, because it looked like Matt Gaetz was about ready to move on.
That wasn't DeSantis' seat before he ran for governor? I know it was North Florida. We could look it up.
It might have been DeSantis. You may be right. I'm not really quite recalling who it was, but it might have been DeSantis' seat. And again, I'm not saying that you might get a Democrat. I'm just saying you don't know what kind of Republican.
No, it's a very conservative area. You unlikely to get a Democrat. And while you're transitioning to the next topic, I'm going to look up Florida's first congressional district and find out who he succeeded, which is an R plus 24 district.
Well, there you go. It's R plus 24. So it's not going to be a risk for Republicans.
No, that's why he's able to win there. And the answer was no, it was not DeSantis' seat. It was a guy named Jeff Miller, who I don't know much about, but it's the Panhandle, so it's quite conservative.
Yes. So the Gaetz thing it's still cooking. It's going to continue to cook. I know that this is not necessarily the most fun story for Republicans to deal with right now, because it's never fun to deal with scandal on your own side. But it's a legit story, at least for the moment, and we'll see where it leads. This House Ethics Committee, I think, investigation is going to be difficult. Now, I'm not clear on what Tom Reed is being accused of. Do you recall what Tom Reed is being accused of?
I don't. I've heard the name mentioned, and I don't think it's linked to anything, involving Matt Gaetz. And I know that he's from upstate New York, I believe. And he was one of the Problem Solvers Caucus people, wasn't he?
Oh, no, yeah, he is. And it's another sexual misconduct thing. It goes back about a month. He was talking about challenging Andrew Cuomo.
Right. And they said he wouldn't be a couple days ago. I do remember that.
Right. And it involves Nicolette Davis, a junior lobbyist for the insurance giant Aflac.
You beat me to it.
Aflac. And apparently, I remember this now.
It was in Minnesota, wasn't it? It was in Minnesota where it happened.
It was in Minneapolis, yeah.
Ironically, yeah.
He fumbled with her bra. A lot of these scandals, take place in Minneapolis. You know my.
You tweeted about that today.
I did.
Ironically.
My St. Paul Saints Larry Craig bobblefoot. I love this thing.
I've been to the Memorial Larry Craig stall at MSP Airport, Concourse B.
I think he's still alive, so it wouldn't be the memorial, Larry Craig.
Well, his career memorial for his career. Sorry.
There you go. His career memorial stall. Absolutely. Yeah. But so that's what's going on with Reed. It's completely separate from anything that's going on with Gates. They're just taking them both up at the same time, probably because the ethics committee is finally getting a chance to settle down and figure out what their agenda is going to be. I do suspect that he's got bigger problems than the House Ethics Committee, but that's not an insubstantial problem for him to have.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right, so where else do you want to go? I mean, you got tons of stuff that you're covering at alphanews.org, and we've talked about two stories anyway, that you haven't written about much. But what's on the top of your spindle these days?
Well, okay. I mean, as a baseball fan and as a political junkie, I mean, the Georgia thing is it's been a tough week for me because on the one hand, I like baseball a lot and I don't want to see people boycott it. I'm not boycotting it other than I'm not going to get the TV package. And I'm probably going to go to very few games this year and I'm probably not going to buy any gear, but I'm still going to follow the Twins and other things in baseball. But the fact that my sports fan friends who aren't political cannot, still liberal or conservative, can't seem to understand how this transcends sports or an all-star game is bizarre to me. Yeah. And my more liberal friends who either have, the whole theme is, have you read the bill? Now, look, it's 96 pages. I have not read all 96 pages. And if you have, that's fantastic. But I've read excerpts and I've researched it and we all know where we are. And so this is a tragic mistake by Major League Baseball that's hurting people over a situation that was preventable. I know Hot Air has reported about they never were involved in contacting showing any concern beforehand. And a lot of liberals will talk about Donald Trump. And by all means, keep scoring on Trump for undermining faith in the elections for his own selfish reasons. Lord knows that you and I have.
Right.
But just because Trump put Republicans in these tough positions of needing to address voter integrity in Georgia and elsewhere after the election doesn't mean what they did is wrong. They made improvements to laws. They got themselves caught up with other states that had similar laws on the books. And what's the worst part, as you know where I'm going with this, is what the current president, has been saying about it. If he gets a few numbers wrong, yes, they would have Trump on a lie-o-meter talking about it. But his Jim Crow comments they're so outlandish, outrageous, offensive. These are things you'd expect to maybe hear from Al Sharpton or Ilhan Omar. But for the 78-year-old president of the United States to be talking about Jim Crow, I mean, I don't know why black people aren't upset about it. I mean, I'm sure plenty of them are. Under Jim Crow, blacks were denied far more meaningful things than voting. The right to life, the right to travel, the right to work. They were treated, as, serfs almost, or slaves, you might say. They could have been lynched, beaten, robbed, raped without any recourse and protection from the law. So whatever you view Georgia GOP's motives, and I think they're pure, basically. Of course, every party wants to win elections, but I think they were bullied by Trump a little bit and also knew that they had to fix some of the problems which happened in 2020. I don't believe their end goal was to reinstitute Jim Crow.
No. I mean, that's a nonsense thing to say.
It's nonsense, but it gets in the public discourse. You have people on the street who believe it. And more importantly, Major League Baseball didn't give a flying you-know-what, as you know, about this bill. Not until Joe Biden went on ESPN the day before opening day and declared he would strongly support moving the All-Star game, which he shouldn't be doing, and talked about Jim Crow, which he's mentioned, 3 or 4 times since. If MLB really cared, it would have intervened earlier. They didn't read the bill. They don't care about voting rights. The commissioner met with the governor, I think, or at least with a congressman that was involved in it, or he met with Stacey Abrams. I know that.
Yep.
And she's got a whole duplicitous thing now. She doesn't want to boycott the state because she's part of the state, but really she does. She really likes what's going on, trust me, because it can bring up animosity and help her next campaign. But look, MLB moved the game, the All-Star game, which brings in, I've heard, 9 figures, over $100 million to the city, a city that's 50% black, to Denver, which is, I don't want to get in the numbers game, but 9% black, and a city that obviously is very segregated, by the way. If you've been to Denver, not one of my favorite cities. Used to be much nicer city 20, 30 years ago. They have their own issues now. But
Yeah, I've been there.
look,
I was there. I was there about 6 years ago, working on my book, and yeah, it's got some issues.
beautiful state, nice suburbs. Denver itself, downtown and surrounding areas, not good, in my opinion.
Well, when I was there, I mean, the big issue there was gentrification.
Right?
You had because they had moved the airport, right?
Yes, out to the
And
suburbs.
well,
rural.
way out. Yeah, way out. The city had basically recaptured the previous real estate from the previous airport,
Stapleton Airport. Yeah.
Stapleton Airport, and they were rebuilding, new housing and some other light commercial type stuff there. And you had a lot of people who were buying into that area from the suburbs and the exurbs so that they could live in the city. And the big concern there was gentrification. And so, yeah, I mean, most cities have these issues, though. I mean, most cities have gentrification issues. There's always these types of tensions that are going on. I just think that what Major League Baseball did here is they went off half-cocked because they were afraid of a social media reaction, which would have been a drop in the bucket had they just ignored it.
It wasn't coming. They said they were worried about players boycotting. Players didn't have any idea what was going on. Now, maybe by July 1st or something, if they had heard of it, a few of them. This is not the NBA. It's not the NFL. The players weren't going to boycott. And of course, they have all the facts wrong. I mean, the New York Times and the Washington Post fact checkers have said that Biden was wrong. Nate Cohn, I believe, and Glenn Kessler. Nate Cohn said, I've got it right in front of me, the quote: "For decades, reformers have assumed that the way to increase turnout is to make voting easier, yet surprisingly expanding voting options to make it more convenient have not had a huge effect on turnout or electoral outcomes." Now, that's part of a longer treatise he did talking about voting rights not being suppressed. But these companies, I think Delta was the only one that was really involved in it, but these companies that are boycotting, so to speak, Georgia, they kind of overlap a little bit with the sponsors of the Beijing Olympics in totalitarian China next year, which I don't believe should be taking place. But I don't believe they have free elections in China, suppressing democracy, putting millions of Uyghurs in cattle cars heading to the concentration camps. That's okay with Rob Manfred, apparently, and LeBron James and the heads of Coca-Cola. It's really irritating. And Schumer and Pelosi and Biden seem to not be concerned anyway, because they're not going to do anything about it. And you're right. The corporations are afraid of blowback, but they shouldn't be, because they're really hurting more of the working class people in Atlanta and elsewhere. And, skeptical part of me thinks the Biden administration is just trying to use this as a diversion from other crises they have, like on the border, which we can get into later.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I think that the problem here is the same problem that Delta has. It's the same problem that Coca-Cola has with this. Is that, well, a couple of problems, and All Pundit points out one of them, which is that they didn't get involved in this issue before the thing passed. I mean, the original proposals on this were actually, there was a lot to criticize in the original proposals on this, because there was a lot of this had the sort of stop the steal stuff that was just sort of crazy, but all that stuff got worked out.
It got worked out.
Legislature. Yeah, they weeded all that stuff out.
It's a serious bill.
Yeah, it's a serious bill, and it actually created more opportunities for early voting. And I don't even like early voting.
I don't like early voting either, but it created opportunities. It's an innocuous bill. And the people around the country who don't know about it are going to condemn it. The press will engage in its customary fact-free delirium. And Joe Biden will say it's Jim Crow, and cable news will echo that. And so are politicians. But nothing in the law, Major League Baseball has not cited one thing in the law that's problematic. Their statement was the worst statement I've ever read. It was all full of social justice messaging and lofty rhetoric. I've got a friend who works in Major League Baseball. Won't obviously tell you his name. He knows nothing about it. Nothing. Nothing was problematic. They don't know what's in the bill. Just like, people in the NBA didn't know what's going on in China, yet they're protesting, with Black Lives Matter here about what's going on in America. The election laws we know in other states, Delaware and New York, it's been mentioned many times by Governor Kemp, are stricter than in Georgia. And the bill does expand voting opportunities. It expands weekend voting, which again, I don't like, but it does. It codifies drop boxes as a permanent feature of the voting system. And it asks for voter ID, which is overwhelmingly popular amongst Americans. As you know, Ed, 75% of Americans like voter ID, and we don't need to get into why, but Minnesota doesn't have it, but it should, because that's a whole different problem. So yeah, Manfred stepped in it, in my opinion. It's not going to be, by the way, everyone keeps saying you're alienating half the country. I think he's alienating more, because baseball fans are not the same as NBA and NFL fans. They're probably a little older and a little more conservative. They don't have as many woke young fans. So he's probably upsetting people who know what's going on more than half. But, he'll deal with the consequences. And without citing any disagreements he has, because he never read it, it's going to be hard for him to really back it up. Or, any writer like Lavelle Neal here in Minneapolis, who I wrote about back on Monday, who wrote a column basically saying Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, is a hero for what he did and brave. And Lavelle Neal's a good writer, but not knowledgeable on this.
Well, and I think that there's some people, this is going to be popular with some people. I mean,
just some, but not half.
No. I mean, it's a marginal issue. It's going to have a marginal following. And what you're going to do is just irritate everybody else. I mean, I haven't followed baseball. I go to games occasionally. I'm going to one in about a month, which will be fun. First time in a couple of years I've been to the park.
By the way, the Target Field has a lot of George Floyd and BLM and end racism signs on the wall this year, so be ready for that. I saw it yesterday.
Fine. I don't mind.
I'm just saying. Yeah. It's all the politics and sports. They came together in the last couple of years, big time.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's almost mild at this point in time.
It is, but it's I think it was Bill O'Reilly who a year ago said, when the NFL had BLM or end racism in one end zone, why didn't they have in the other end zone back the blue? To balance it out. But they wouldn't. Yeah.
No, well, and in Minneapolis, you would have trouble having a back the blue statement.
Well,
we can talk a little bit about that too, because
in Denver, in Dallas, in
right,
Indianapolis,
right. We can talk a little bit about that too, because you're going to a ball game on Monday, right?
Yeah, next week. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm going in a month. And this is in the context of this, in Minneapolis, in the context of this trial. Now, I'm not terribly concerned about this. I think the trial will be over before I go down there anyway. But, there's a lot of national attention on us here in the Twin Cities. I have not really followed the trial very much. I'm relying on a couple of people who are attorneys who are Eddie McCarthy at National Review, Scott Johnson, both those guys are friends of mine. Scott Johnson at Powerline, who's just awesome. And William Jacobson at Legal Insurrection is also keeping a close eye on these. These guys are attorneys, and they're watching it constantly, so they have a much better perspective on this. Are you surprised at the level of attention? I guess I'm not surprised at the level of attention. Are you surprised at the level of detail from the testimony that is getting into the national media? Not the Strib. I expect the Strib to do that, to cover this well. They're supposed to do that. But I'm actually kind of surprised how much of this is the day-to-day stuff is showing up. The stuff about, the pathologist said this, and the police expert said that, and I'm a little surprised and a little taken aback at how much of that granularity is getting into the national media.
Yeah, with everything else going on in the news, you would think it would take at least the nitty gritty details, the minutia would take a little bit more of a backseat. Now, we at alphanews.org have been covering it. It's not my beat, but we have 2 or 3 reporters covering it daily with multiple posts and videos. But we're also a Minnesota-based website. The fact is, if you turn on CNN throughout the day or evening, which I occasionally do just to check up, there's pretty much a live feed to this trial most of the time on CNN and MSNBC. Now, maybe they don't want to cover other news, like policy issues and the border and whatever else might be. Fox has not been covering it, understandably. It's a long trial. We're in week 3. Well, they had jury selection for a couple of weeks, but it's been over a month since we started the whole process. It's going to go for another 2 weeks at least, I'd say, right?
Right. Yep.
So it's a long trial. You could argue that means it's a serious trial, which of course it is. But on the other hand, to cover it almost 24/7 seems a little bit much. But I know why the mainstream media is doing that. I mean, this is a way to divide the country by race, by ideology, maybe by social class, and get attention for what their causes are. But they're not going to televise what goes on in the streets as much, with activists out there that are, blocking roads and telling people to honk for justice or whatever, everything's political these days. We just talked about baseball. The trial's political. I guarantee you, if you surveyed Republicans and Democrats, they would have different opinions of it, which is unfortunate. But no, I'm not surprised. And that's why I'm not following it as much, because we know what's going to happen if they don't get the charge they want, because Keith Ellison may have overcharged. It's
yeah, but I mean, they fixed that problem. I mean, they did. I mean, the judge allowed him finally to fix the problem.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm seeing and from what Andy McCarthy is writing, I think that they're making a case that this is not just an overdose. And again, here's the other part of this too, and this is the problem when you have national media focusing on minutia in a trial, is that this is really complicated stuff, and the jury is completely immersed in this. And so if you go off half-cocked on certain things, you're going to end up misleading your viewers. You might end up misleading your viewers.
I don't know how concerned they are about that. I mean, it's I
hear you on that, but
you've got athletes and celebrities who convicted Chauvin of first-degree murder the day it happened. I mean, you had an actress, comedian, whoever it was, I forget her name, 3 or 4 days ago, tweeting, "Why are we even having a trial? We saw the video." She missed 4th grade.
Oh yeah, that was. I can't think of her name now.
One of those very unfunny left-wing comedians.
Yes, yes, I know exactly which one you're talking about, and I can't think of her name right now, which is probably just as well. Now, I'm not writing much about this, and I know that you're not really writing much about this. Alpha News is actually covering the trial, though. So alphanews.org, they're actually providing these daily updates to the readers.
They are. They are providing updates. They're providing on Twitter. They're providing video clips every 20, 30 minutes. And of course, we've got journalists in the area who are providing live coverage. So yeah, alphanews.org is a good place to go. Used to be alphanewsmn.com, still is if you want to go that way, but we shortened it a little to alphanews.org. And I'm sure if you go there right now, you'll see 3 or 4 articles about it, what's going on each day. And it's a good way to get your news. And like you mentioned, there are other places as well to get it. There's a lot of good coverage, but it's not something that I have been focusing on because I'm a generalist.
We're both generalists. We had this discussion right before we went on there. We're both generalists. And so, AJ covers a lot of national stuff. He also still covers some local stuff, especially when it's got tie-ins to national debates. And we talk about the border wall for a bit, because I know you've been writing about that. Or the border crisis, I should say, because we've got.
Well, how dare you say crisis? Come on, God.
Ilhan Omar is going to be picketing my house very soon, I'm sure. No, she's not. But she's scolding.
You're not in her district, no. Okay.
I'm not in her district. No, I'm not. I'm not in Crazy 5. I'm in Slightly Askew 2.
As someone once said, District 5 is the anti-Semitic seat, which is really unfortunate because it's a heavily Jewish district. But with Ellison followed by Omar, yeah, you've had well over a decade of very. Our friend Jeff Dunn would certainly call them anti-Semitic. I probably would agree with that, but certainly anti-Israel and not fans of the Jews. Let's just say.
No, which is interesting because MN5 actually has a substantial Jewish population.
Largest Jewish population in Minnesota of any district, and I believe 2nd or 3rd in all of the Midwest, after some areas of Chicago and Cleveland. So
actually, it's a very substantial Jewish community here in Minneapolis. Very liberal, of course, which is not unusual, but they are part of MN05. Well, tell us a little bit about Ilhan Omar's scolding of Joe Biden over the mere suggestion. Mind you, that he might finish he might close the gaps in the border wall that was left over from his CEO. Yeah, just plug the gaps. Plug the gaps, I think, is what the White House said.
I'm not on Twitter, as you know, because I'm intelligent. But I do.
Thanks, AJ. Appreciate that, man.
You've actually those are your words. You said them.
I know. I said that. Yes.
But I do scour the Twitter sphere to follow intelligent people like yourself and others, and Ilhan Omar, because she always has a lot to say. I don't know what she does during the day. She seems to pretty much just tweet all day, which maybe that's normal for most Congress people these days. But she was not happy on Wednesday. She was ranting about various things on Wednesday, more than usual, about racism and xenophobia. And then she got to calling the president. Well, she didn't call him a racist. She said, the exact tweet is really easy. Oh, it's shameful and unacceptable for POTUS to continue the construction of Trump's xenophobic and racist wall. Yes, the whole wall, all 2,200 miles, very xenophobic and racist. So she wasn't happy. I rarely read the comments, but I saw a few comments underneath, and most of them agreed. The wall's very, very bad if you're on the far left. And she was down there. She was down at the border a week and a half ago, unlike our vice president, who's the border czar that doesn't visit the border. We could talk about that later. But she said...
Well, we can talk about that next, actually, because I definitely want to get into that with you.
Yeah. Well, President Biden is considering restarting construction or filling in the gaps of the Trump wall, if you will. And Omar's not happy. It's really not much more to the story than that, just to say that, she doesn't want to see the wall, as most liberals and people on the left do not. But Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, who's been pretty inept in this, but at least he's gone down to the border, he has talked about, decisions that may be made soon about particular areas of the wall that need, very careful with the words, renovation, gaps, gates, not Matt, but GATES, yep. And areas where the wall has been completed, but the technology has not been implemented. So we'll see. We'll see that there. Maybe you'll have Omar tying herself to the wall in protests like some people do. I don't know. She's very concerned about the wall. Pa doesn't like Israel's wall either, I'm guessing.
Well, no, I mean, I've been there on Israel's wall, and while I think it's been very effective, I think that there are, a few legitimate questions about where it was located and how it works. Because, like I said, I managed to see that up close and personal at least one occasion. But I mean, the idea that closing the gaps on this is some sort of a racist initiative. I mean, this gets back to the whole Jim Crow thing in Georgia. I mean, I almost want to quote Syndrome from The Incredibles: when everything's racist, nothing's racist.
The Jim Crow thing is a perfect example of, the old rule of thumb that you don't call someone a Nazi or you lose the argument. We're getting to the point where when you start calling everyone a racist or using the word Jim Crow, it's becoming the new term. It's the new Nazi charge. People who call anything in today's America the new Jim Crow really are advertising their own lack of seriousness or ignorance of history, as well as their just cynical attitudes and general ignorance. I'll say it again. So I'm not listening to people when they say Jim Crow. I don't like the racist charge. I don't think Joe Biden's racist, but certainly he has a lot of comments in the last 20 years. Put you all back in chains. You ain't black if you don't vote for me. Are you on drugs to a black reporter? He's got a lot more comments in his past that could be deemed racist or racially insensitive than most Republicans, and probably including Donald Trump. So be careful what you do there. As for the border, he hasn't gone down. And Kamala has not gone down. She went to Oakland. She went to Chicago. She went to Connecticut. She's having a good time gallivanting to her favorite liberal cities. And I think it was, someone had a great line. It probably was John Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana, who always has good lines, if you've heard him. He said something about, making Kamala Harris. She said Kamala Harris is, for open borders, so to speak, and said some terrible things about ICE. And he said, making her the border czar is like making El Chapo the drug czar.
Right.
Right. But I don't think Biden cares. I think, of course, they want this crisis to go away, but they've created this humanitarian crisis, and their rhetoric and their policies have. And I think even if it's for a photo op, if she's really the czar, 16 days ago she was named the czar. I don't know if that's TSAR or CZAR, but regardless, I don't like the term.
Either way.
My great-grandparents.
She was the border crisis czar. And really, honestly, that's something that we called her. He just said that she was going to be the point.
Oh, she's the most qualified. Yes, the most qualified person.
Yeah.
I think you're much more qualified than she is to cover that, frankly.
Well, I don't want to get into that because I still want to get to the ambassadorship to Ireland. I'm still angling for that. So
you also want to be the border czar at the Manitoba, Minnesota border in the northwestern part of the state by the Angela.
Absolutely. I'll have my little boat out there with my fishing line so I can keep an eye on it at all times.
Let's be honest, the Lake of the Woods in northeast Minnesota is an open border. I mean, you can float right into Canada. There's no one stopping you but a few fish. But I think you have to check in before you canoe off into the boundary waters, which is apparently quite a place. I haven't been up there.
Well, and
by
right
boat.
now, of course, it's not completely open anyway because of COVID. Both the U.S. and Canada are restricting border crossing.
Well,
to
yeah, it's a little bit
essential-
chilly there until June
Well,
1st.
Yeah, well, that's true as well. But I mean, because of COVID-19.
Oh yeah, you can't get into Canada. No, we know that. That's been a problem for a lot of businesses. But yeah,
but back to Kamala Harris, and Elon
Kamala.
here.
Racist.
Kamala Harris. Back to Kamala Harris. She's been 16 days, I think you said, and I think that's right. 16 days. She's been the border crisis point person, if you will, and then based on that, she has done a great deal of work in bakeries in Chicago. I mean, that's sort of just a fun thing, but she's only made 2 phone calls, right? I mean, it's the White House is the one who's saying, well, she's called this person, she's called that person in 16 days of being in charge of the crisis.
I made 2 phone calls before 10 a.m. today. I mean, yeah. I mean, you had a post, I think, today from the Arizona Attorney General who said she needs to go down there and look into the eyes of the people.
Yeah, Karen Townsend, by the way. That was one of
what's
Karen's.
going on. I mean, it's, we're paying $60 million per day or something to house the people that have come here, over 100,000 it was over 170,000 just in March, including 20,000 children in March, going up every month. 20,000 unaccompanied children and 170,000, I think, overall people. 172,000, a 71% increase from February, not surprisingly. Now, they keep telling us it's a seasonal thing, but these are either record high numbers or largest since 2007. I don't quite recall what was going on in 2007, by the way, to initiate such a influx.
Oh, no, I remember the 2007 influx.
Okay.
They were discussing comprehensive immigration reform, and the discussion touched off a run for the border.
Well, there you go. I mean, the joke is, do these people follow the news in America? And of course, the answer is yes. A lot of people are like, oh, the guy in El Salvador is not reading, hot air. Well, maybe he's not reading hot air, but he's not reading the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or the AP. Of course they are. Of course they are.
Well, especially the traffickers who are selling people on these things.
Right. That's what I meant.
And absolutely, they're reading the newspapers. They're using the information there to spike business. We're setting these incentives, and every time we go through this, we set these incentives, and that's the reason why. I mean, you can complain about how Trump separated families and how he kept children separated and didn't keep track of them. I think that there's reasonable criticisms of that, but by cracking down on the border, closing the border, forcing people to stay in Mexico, it turned off the incentives. Nobody wanted to come up there just to stay in Mexico.
Yeah,
so they just stopped coming, and that was what we needed them to do.
Yeah, they reversed it. They reversed the Remain in Mexico policy, and their policy now, if it exists, really seems to be spend more money, do the same or do nothing, pursue an investigation into the roots of migration. They always want to do that, the roots of 9/11, the roots of migration, and pursue changes that are really relying on progress by Mexico and Central American countries, which we can't always rely on. Blame the Trump administration, of course. Always start off by saying we're cleaning up their mess and they were inhumane. Until recently, deny media access to covering the story and spin at the podium if you're Jen Psaki. So it's, by the way, we also have a COVID crisis. I mean, this is why it's more serious in 2007.
Well, I mean, I would actually argue the humanitarian crisis is more serious because COVID, which is a serious pandemic, is largely, almost entirely non-fatal, right? Especially among younger people, it's not entirely non-fatal, and the more you have it, the more deaths you're going to get. And it is a concern when you've got this influx of people who are just rushing the border and then getting into the country and going parts unknown. But I would say that the humanitarian issue here is the bigger crisis. It's people wandering around in the desert. It's people who are being dropped literally over the border wall. Those 2 kids that were dropped literally over the border wall. I mean, it was lucky that CBP spotted that so they could go back and get the kids. Otherwise, those kids, they were 5 and 3 years old. They weren't going to survive out there. It's crazy.
That was horrifying, and I don't like to do whataboutism. I really don't. But there were Time magazine covers in 2018 with fake covers, I believe, where a little kid was looking up at Trump, who was scowling down at them, It was inaccurate. It sells emotion. But this, and I'm sure the networks covered it, but they're not going to link it to the Biden administration or Democrats or whatever. I mean, the Border Patrol agents, by the way, talk about a group that needs a raise. I mean, we talk about, more money for teachers, more money for this and that. These people are basically being teachers, parents, police. They're predominantly Hispanic for the most part. And they don't get a lot of love from the media or Democrats. It's unfortunate.
Nope. No, I agree with you on that. So this crisis is continuing. Now it's turning into an endemic crisis now because they're not doing anything to stem the flow here. They're not reversing some of these policies that created the incentives for people to come to the border. And until you reverse those incentives, here's the thing that frustrates me about policy is that right now, especially now, but it's kind of true in every single administration, but it seems to be more true in Democratic administrations, is that you have people who set policy who don't take into account any sort of impact of the incentives of what they're doing. Now they'll pass legislation that says, well, we're going to give tax breaks to electric vehicles. We're going to give because we want to incentivize people to buy those. Okay, yes. So you understand incentives, right? So when you say, oh, you don't have to stay in Mexico anymore. You just come over here and we'll let you cross the border and let you into the United States. Do you grasp that you're actually going to incentivize a whole lot more of that border traffic? And when you say, well, we're not going to close the wall up, do you get the impression that might be an incentive? The same thing with the corporate tax rates. I mean, we're talking about raising the corporate tax rates from 21% to 28%. Right, and I don't know how much you've followed this. This is the.
Oh, I know about it. I mean, that's now a lot of Republicans are now saying, "Heck, why not?" Because they're mad at corporations for what they've been doing. Because corporations have become so left wing in their policies, but that hurts the consumer and it hurts the employee. So I'm not for raising it up to what number.
Really, right now, it's just the act of raising it. That's the problem because you're dealing with an economy that's still recovering, and hiking taxes is going to incentivize prices to go up. It's going to make it difficult for people to buy products. Beyond that, though, I mean, this is how you end up getting corporations to offshore, and you hear, well, we're going to keep them from doing that. Yeah, how? What are you going to do? You're going to chain the CEO's ankle to his desk? The Obama administration said the same thing when they were hiking taxes in the Obama administration. Guess what? They offshored anyway. It wasn't until you lowered the tax rate so it was competitive with the rest of the world that corporations started bringing their capital back. So they didn't penalize. This is the 2017 tax cut. Which, remember, I don't know if you remember all the deaths that occurred in December 2017 after we passed that. Remember how Democrats were saying, people are going to die? And I'm not kidding. They were actually saying people are going to die if you pass this.
People did die, but not because of that. I mean, people always, that's they push grandma off the cliff, Paul Ryan. I mean, it's always about Republicans killing people, and it hasn't ever happened. I mean,
right.
At least
so the 2017 tax, they called it reform. It really didn't go far enough. They should have done much more. But the tax cuts, it was a legit tax cut and some restructuring the corporate tax policies on capital.
I mean, it was for middle class people, yeah, but for the wealthier people, the lawyers making $350 a year, they weren't getting their taxes cut at all.
No. So I mean, this was a broad-based benefit. This is for people, in individuals. I'm talking though about the fact that they reset the incentives for capital so that it incentivized these corporations to pull capital from abroad and bring it back to the United States, right? We removed the penalties for it. And so they were incentivized to come back and bring that capital back. And what they do, they started investing in American factories. They started investing in American employees. They started paying bonuses to the employees they already had. There was a whole bunch of that right away. And that's what you want to incentivize.
That story is not going to get told, though, Ed. That's the thing. That story's not told. It's a tax cut for the rich, and that's all people have to hear. And I would stop using the word corporation or corporate tax. It's business. Say the word corporate to someone on the left, even though, again, most corporations are run by liberals these days, it seems, or at least people who pay lip service to liberal progressive policies. We've seen that with everyone from Home Depot and Coke to Major League Baseball and other sports, Amazon, Google, big tech. But if you just call it a business tax, you might get some people to understand. There's a lot of emotion in wording, and corporate sounds like rich guy on the 51st floor running, the biggest companies, when really it's a tax on mid-sized businesses that are hurt by it and have to ship jobs overseas or cut staff or what have you. So, right. But I don't think Biden cares. I mean, I don't. He
wants to spend the money on the infrastructure, and he needs the tax income in order to get it through on reconciliation.
The infrastructure. Jeez.
I mean, this is what this tax change is for. It's to generate
I know. That's how he's going to pay for it. He said, "How are you going to pay for the $2 trillion infrastructure?" And look, just briefly on infrastructure, I travel by car a lot. I would say I probably travel by car for work and pleasure. I would think more than 95% of Americans. I mean, I've been to all 50 states by car. Well, I haven't driven to Alaska or Hawaii, but you know my point.
Yes.
I take a lot of road trips. Well, Alaska.
Hawaii would be impressive. If you got to Hawaii by car, that would be impressive, AJ.
Yeah, I go say hi to Maisie Hirona while I'm there. Well, anyway, I travel on these roads, and of course there are bumpier roads, some places more than others. But if you travel, tell me that you see, and again, interstate, non-interstate, back roads of Southwest Minnesota and Nebraska in the South. Tell me you see crumbling infrastructure. I know this might be a naive thing to say, but I think that, people who go into this discussion of report cards, our infrastructure is a D+. We're 13th in the world in infrastructure. Who do you think is making these report cards? The people that evaluate these bridges and roads are people who are going to have a profound economic interest in the government spending money on these projects.
Right. That's exactly correct.
It's not conspiratorial. It's the truth. I'm not saying you can pinpoint certain areas that need it, but to say they're all crumbling. Then, of course, you get into the stuff that, human infrastructure and different topics that the Biden administration has discussed, which really aren't infrastructure, racial and social justice matters and what have you. But I think the roads have never been in better condition. Maybe because of COVID, people aren't traveling as much and they've done more work on it. I mean, to me, a lot of these roads are still local issues, not the interstates, but the state highways and what have you. And I don't think the government needs to be spending trillions of dollars on them, especially if they're going to use it to hurt people in the long run or spend it on things that are proven not to work. So it would be nice if they'd be a little more honest about it. But when it comes to the border, when it comes to guns, which we don't necessarily need to get into today, but that's another topic, and infrastructure and other socio-cultural matters, the left tends to be very dishonest with how they talk about the issue.
So, let's talk about guns, because this came up yesterday, right? And I think we talked a little bit about it with Dwayne yesterday because it happened in the morning, but I mean, it's still worth saying. You had Joe Biden get up there and issue a series of nonsensical statements, straw man arguments, and flat out lies. I mean, the gun show loophole is a flat out lie. And PolitiFact rated it mostly false, which I was actually surprised by.
Did they change it after that? Did they change it?
Oh, I don't know if they changed it or not.
I thought I read somewhere they they pulled it back and said it wasn't quite as false as they said it was. Maybe I misread that.
Oh, well, I haven't seen it, but it wouldn't surprise me. I was actually surprised that I was actually surprised that they went that hard at Joe Biden on this, but it is an absolute lie. There is no such thing as a gun show loophole.
Correct.
There are commercial sales and there are private sales. Private sales don't require a background check. That's one person to another person, transfer or a sale. Commercial sales is a federal firearms license holding commercial seller selling guns as their business. It is illegal for a FFL to pose as a private sale. If you've got an FFL, you have to handle all sales as commercial. So if you're at a gun show, you follow the rules. I mean, it's not that difficult. Gun shows, you might get a few more people who show up with their firearms and who are willing to sell them or they may be there to sell or trade them on a personal basis. So it may facilitate some of these private transfers, but private transfers don't require background checks in any context, with the exception of about 12 states that do require it. You have to go through an FFL in those 12 states. Now, what Biden wants to do is he wants to make all of these transfers go through background checks. And this is a proposal that's been floating around for a long time. Manchin and Toomey their proposal from a few years ago nibbled at this a bit. It didn't make it in every context, but if you sold the gun, I think it required you to go through an FFL. And look, I mean, you can make an argument that that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the problem is that the proposals that are coming down the pike actually require you to do that with transfers. So the upshot of this, AJ,
yes, sir.
Whether or not I'm at a gun show or not, if AJ says, well, hey, I really kind of dig your Ruger LC9S because it's a pretty good gun, and it is, and it's pretty awesome, and I really enjoy it. And I say, well, hey, AJ, why don't you go ahead and take it out to the range and fire it, and then just bring it back when you're done. Under these rules that Biden is proposing, we would both have to go to an FFL. He would need to run a background check. AJ would have to have a background check done, plus any wait period that applies to sales. So it would take him 5 days a 5-day waiting period on this, plus whatever the background time would be. And then when he was done using it, we'd have to do the whole thing all over again for him to return my own pistol to me. That's how stupid this is. And it's a lie. It's a lie to cover up a bad policy.
Right.
Proposal.
I was going to say, this is one of those issues, Democrats tend to poll better oftentimes on healthcare, some social issues and what have you, even on economics. But when it comes to guns, they don't win these battles. No. This happens every time. Or Barack Obama did it all the time. I'm going to act because I'm not going to wait for Congress. Why do these things happen all the time in our America? It's all this self-aggrandizing language that they use to sell their policies. But how is this going to help Biden's agenda? It's not going to go through. No, Joe Manchin's not going to vote for it. Kristen Sinema's not going to vote for it. John Tester probably won't vote for it in Montana. Every pro-gun voter in the country was just informed by Mr. Biden that he's going to bypass Congress or try to and take executive action on gun control. And people who are less engaged, let's say, who always hear nothing ever gets done about guns, will find out that nothing ever gets done about guns. It's not going to happen. So and then they nominate this guy for the AFT, who I'm sure I remember you talked about the other day.
The AFT, yes.
AFT, yeah, exactly. The NEA and the AFT. No, the ATF, I know Biden got that mixed up, who's not going to probably get through for the same reasons. And these gun control activists will have this, we'll again come back to the Democrats when there's next tragedy and say we must pass these extreme measures that have broad support, they'll say, in the country, which they probably don't. And then they will say, if you're against these restrictions, then you're either a murderer or blood on your hands, or they don't go through. What were you getting so upset about, you pro-gun people? Nothing ever happens. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those wedge issues. So
for both sides. And,
for both sides. And abortion the same way.
Abortion is the same way for the other side. Yes, I agree.
It seems to me to be a lose-lose cause for them, and I don't think this is going anywhere. I don't think the ATF guy is going to get in, at least from what I've read about him.
I suspect that he's a non-starter with a couple of the people in the Democratic caucus too. Although you have to wonder, right? Did they? I mean, wouldn't you think that they would have run this guy by Joe Manchin first? I mean, this is a 50-50
I don't know if they communicate with Joe Manchin. I mean, maybe they're expecting Collins and Murkowski to vote for him. I don't know.
I don't think Murkowski's willing to buck
Alaska, right?
But Alaska's a gun state.
So is Maine. Once you get out of the cities,
right?
Maine's like Minnesota. Once you get out
and Collins just won her last election, so she's not feeling a lot of pressure to be
she had a good couple of years with Kavanaugh defense and winning the election.
But I mean, don't you have to make sure that you've got Manchin on this and John Tester?
Maybe. Well, Tester is a disappointment. For a guy who represents a red state, he seems to. I mean, why isn't he listed with Manchin and Sinema as question marks on every bill? This guy seems to be a 95% Democrat voter in a state that, and I know he wins re-election, but in a state that's heavily Republican. Same with the other senator in Arizona, Kelly, who ran as a moderate, who, as far as I know, has been voting lockstep with Democrats, and he's up for re-election next year. Mark Kelly.
He is. That was a special election that he won. He won it against, what was her name?
The woman who loses to every Democrat, Martha McSally.
Martha McSally's not the greatest candidate. I mean, she's just
no.
And she got appointed to that spot after losing the previous
Martha
election.
McSally is a fine woman. She's a
fine woman.
War hero, what have you, means well, but she lost 2 seats in 2 years in a red state. It's really can't come back from that. And I wonder if, as long as Arizona doesn't nominate Sheriff Joe or Kelly Ward, who's crazy.
Oh, Kelly Ward is insane. Yeah.
Right. And she wants to run again, I'm sure. She's the chair of the party there. But as long as they don't nominate someone like that, I got to think they have a good chance of winning back that seat, because I have parents in Arizona and friends, moderates who voted for Mark Kelly, and I have Republicans who barely could vote for Martha McSally if they did, because for some reason she's just not, and I hate to say it like this, just not likable. I don't know why. She's not far right or too moderate. She just doesn't inspire people.
It's just, some people just aren't cut out for it.
Well, she was a congresswoman. I mean, it wasn't like she just jumped in.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between running in a congressional district and running statewide. Congressional districts tend to be created around a particular identity, right? Not all of them, but most of them are. This is what people call gerrymandering, but that's
why 90% of them get reelected very easily, of course.
Exactly, because there's not a lot of competition in there. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that she was doing good in a district that was really kind of carved out for somebody who would...
It's an R+1 district. I just looked it up. So it wasn't like she was running in a far-right district. It's basically, suburban Phoenix down toward Tucson.
How many times did she win that seat, though?
Twice.
Yeah, I mean, it really might have been the quality of her competition.
It's now represented by a Democrat, so it's a swing district.
Yeah, well, and maybe she'll go back and try it again. But she wasn't the greatest statewide candidate. I like her personally. I think she personally is, like you said, a fine American. I think Mark Kelly and Kyrsten Sinema are fine Americans. I just disagree with them an awful lot on stuff.
It was quite interesting. I don't. She has her far left background and some views, but then she's pretty honest about things, maybe even more honest than Manchin. And she's certainly not afraid of anybody. The way she acts and dresses, and she's a character. I give her credit.
I mean, that's kind of fun, right? I mean,
I've got a stepfather in Arizona, and he's watching, who voted for Trump twice, and he voted for Sinema. So there you go. He's a Trump Sinema voter. Probably a few of them out there.
Well, yeah, and look, I mean, I've got a lot of respect for Sinema because she does take stands on principle, and especially this is true with the filibuster, which we should talk a little bit about, because Joe Manchin is seeming to be becoming a very firm voice against this. The op-ed in Washington Post. I mean, and then last night, I don't know if you saw on CNN, I think he actually was pretty eloquent on CNN as to why he is becoming so adamant about this, which was the Capitol riot. He said he never even conceived that something like this was possible, and his thing is we need to stop with the with all of the baiting each other all the time and start to work collaboratively on governing so that we don't generate passions like this. And Congress is set up for that. I mean, that's what the committee systems are set up for, is to write legislation with both parties involved so that both parties end up invested in whatever the product is. And we've gotten a long ways away from that over the last decade or so. Really kind of longer than that.
Yeah, I read the editorial last night, and I just pulled it up. So there was a paragraph that I thought about. This is the key paragraph about halfway down in Joe Manchin's Washington Post editorial that I believe ran yesterday, though it's dated this evening of the 7th.
Yes.
Every time the Senate voted to weaken the filibuster in the past decade, the political dysfunction and gridlock have grown more severe. The political games playing out in the halls of Congress only fuel that hateful rhetoric and violence we see across the country right now. The truth is, my Democrat friends do not have all the answers, and my Republican friends do not either. This has always been the case. And then he continues by saying, generations of senators that come before us put their heads down, their pride aside to solve the complex issues. We must do the same. And it's a little bit pablum, but it's the right thing to say. And I didn't see a CNN interview. I have seen him on Fox and elsewhere where he's been occasionally eloquent on this. Sometimes I don't always trust what he says because his voting record outside of near attendant and a few things has pretty much, he falls in with the Democrats. But it's important that this is not revoked. And frickin' Joe Biden knows that. He's the biggest defender of the filibuster in Senate history. And either he's senile, and I don't get into that senility stuff because I'm not a doctor, or he's a liar, or he's just a consummate crass politician to actually say what he said at the press conference last month and else. And I'll just tell you this, Ed, you know me. I'm not a Biden hater. I was very happy he got the nomination over Bernie Sanders, but I've been extremely disappointed in his first 75 days. Starting when he picked Kamala Harris, who I thought was, despite the press saying she was the safe option, I thought was the worst option, the most radical person in the Senate.
Yep.
Authoritarian tendencies, frankly, vacuous. His speech about COVID, where he July 4th, and just the whole domineering style, and then his Jim Crow comments and some of his other racial comments and his policies. I mean, would a Bernie Sanders presidency at this point, you know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
Would a Bernie Sanders presidency at this point have any different policies than Joe Biden's?
I think we would have seen a $6 trillion infrastructure bill. I think we would have seen. I think we would have seen harder left nominees for the cabinet.
Yeah,
some of those cabinet appointments were actually not. For Democratic.
He went to pick Anthony Blinken or
No.
Austin or Janet Yellen. A few. Right. Okay. A few.
Yeah, I mean, I think it matters that you don't have a socialist in the White House.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But, and these voters that voted in the Democratic primary and Super Tuesday that gave him the big wins over Bernie, they didn't vote for radicalism. These were moderate, pragmatic, working class Democrats, African Americans who heavily supported him. They didn't vote for socialism. And you're right. The nominees, despite what some people on the far right say, they're all bad. No, I don't agree with probably any of them. He didn't pick any Republicans. And I don't agree with Janet Yellen on much, but she's not a socialist. I'm sure Jeff Dunitz is listening, telling me she is. Check your ticker. Anthony Blinken is not overtly anti-Israel, although some of the envoys like Robert Malley might be.
Oh yeah,
Lloyd Austin
Malley for sure.
Right. Lloyd Austin seems like a patriotic guy.
Sure,
Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
Outside of Deb Haaland and Javier Becerra and a couple others.
Mayorkas, who is
pretty bad.
Mayorkas is bad not because he's un-American or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. He's corrupt.
Corrupt and incompetent. Yeah.
He's corrupt and incompetent. He was corrupt in the Obama administration too. I don't get the Mayorkas pick. I don't get Becerra at HHS. I was thinking
Attorney
Becerra,
General, right?
Attorney General, right? And I still wouldn't have been happy with Becerra there because he was also part
of
those.
No, but Merrick Garland is better than Becerra there.
Absolutely.
Again,
absolutely better. Yeah, I mean, it's not a Republican administration. So
no, it's not, and people need to realize that. But Obama did appoint. He kept on Skip Gates, as they call him, Bob Gates. Some people call him Bill Gates, but it's Bob Gates. He kept on. Chuck Hagel he brought on, but Chuck Hagel may be a Republican, but his foreign policy is out there.
Roy LaHood at transportation.
Right, Obama.
I'm actually a little surprised that Biden didn't choose the nominal Republican on the cabinet. That does seem to have been
someone not to. He wasn't going to do it. And Donald Trump technically didn't. But if you look at Mnuchin was a lifelong Democrat.
Yep.
Peter Navarro was a Democrat, even though he's a huge Trump supporter. Jared Kushner was a Democrat, may still be. Ivanka's a Democrat.
Right.
He surrounded himself with plenty of Democrats. The guy that he called a globalist for a while, Larry Cohen, Steve Cohen, Gary Cohen. Yeah, he was a Democrat.
Yep.
There were half a dozen people in that administration that had his ear that were Democrats. I mean, heck, Omarosa maybe was a Democrat. Another wonderful pick there.
Well, yeah. I find it a little interesting that he hasn't picked the nominal Republican, but it may have been that they sent some feelers out and nobody wanted to do it either. So, I mean, you don't know. I mean, who in the Senate right now is the Chuck Hagel that would cross over into a Biden administration? I can't think of it.
Some would say Mitt Romney, but I wouldn't. I don't think he would.
No, he
There's a lot of Romney haters out there, and I don't agree with him on that. But look, maybe he'll pick Ed Morrissey for ambassador to Northern Ireland, and that'll be that.
Well, I think for the Republic of Ireland, I do the Northern Ireland envoy, except that I actually think that, you can they're just starting to pick their ambassadors, by the way, which is about right. This is about the time where you're going to start doing that because you got to fill all the cabinet and sub-cabinet positions first. And so right now they have taken the resignations of everybody who was a political appointee. They've still got the careerists in place in some of these other postings. And the charge d'affaires in each of these vacancies, they're running things, and that's fine. This is the way it works. The Northern Ireland thing. Let's talk a little bit about this because I wrote about it in my VIP column today. Republic of Ireland, ambassador to the Republic of Ireland, I think is somebody who, just like any other country, you should understand something about the country that you're going to. You don't necessarily have to speak Irish. I speak a little Irish, but you don't have to.
Well, Mick Mulvaney was Northern Ireland, not Ireland, correct?
Mick Mulvaney was, he was the temporary assignment as the envoy to Northern Ireland.
Because I knew he took a role like that when he left.
That's not technically an ambassadorial thing because Northern Ireland's part of the United Kingdom. So that would be the ambassador in the United Kingdom would be the one that.
Well, he wasn't the ambassador to Ireland, the Republic of Ireland.
No, he wasn't.
Even though his last name ends with a Y, which I believe was a requirement to be the ambassador.
Mulvaney is definitely an Irish name.
The Mulvaneys, the Morrisseys, the O'Malleys, the Rooneys, the Foleys,
There you go. But not the Romneys.
No. It's a good point.
but at any rate, Northern Ireland, the envoy to Northern Ireland really should be a specialist. Really should be a diplomatic specialist because the issues there are very critical. Whereas and I joke around about, wanting to be Joe Biden's ambassador. I'm a terrible choice for Joe Biden's ambassador. I would have been a terrible choice for Barack Obama's ambassador too, because you want somebody who actually is in sync with the policies of the administration before you send him out there. Also, you want somebody wealthy enough to throw parties because that's part of what your function is out there. But the Northern Ireland thing, it's going to take somebody who is pretty steeped in the policy and in the diplomacy, the diplomatic skills to deal with all of the different competing interests in that thing. And it's erupting again. I mean, this is over the last week or so. You're starting to see sectarian violence all over again because the loyalists are extremely unhappy with Brexit, which anybody who looked at the situation should have been able to figure out. And Boris Johnson putting the trade border in the Irish Sea has left Northern Ireland hanging out to dry. They're basically being run by the EU, even though they're part of the UK, and they don't like it.
I was there. My wife and I took our anniversary trip there in 2019 in the summer. So
Northern Ireland. Oh, good for you.
Well, we dipped into Northern Ireland. There was no border. It was like driving from Stearns County, Minnesota to the next county over. Just the only difference was that there were some different flags and the money was no good anymore. And the speed limit was all of a sudden in miles per hour instead of kilometers, or maybe it was the opposite. But I remember talking to people about that, and it seemed like there was mixed views on Brexit, and people who were against it or concerned about it, let's just say, were quite concerned, especially about the border in Northern Ireland, what it would mean. Yeah. But look, I think when we're talking about border issues, there's only one person for the job.
Kamala Harris. She's the Northern Ireland envoy.
I can think of no one more qualified than Kamala Harris.
She's eminently qualified to but I mean, this is the predictable fallout from Brexit. And to a certain extent, it's going to impact Scotland too, because Scotland didn't want to leave the EU either. Scotland has maybe a millennium-long, well, not quite, but several centuries-long connection to the continent. It's called the Auld Alliance for a reason. It's Auld. It's very Auld. It goes back to, I think, the 14th century when Scotland aligned with France as a counterweight to England, and which created all sorts of fun.
What do the Welsh think about this, though?
The Welsh aren't very happy about it either, but they were a little bit more pro-Brexit than Scotland or Northern Ireland was. It was not a popular initiative in Scotland and Northern Ireland, in part because Scotland is just not happy with Westminster anyway. But in Northern Ireland, it was because the Unionists there understood this was going to create a huge problem for them.
That I know. Well, they're not connected physically to Britain. That's the difference. Northern Ireland, they're not connected physically to Britain.
Like whereas Scotland is, yeah. And the problem is that the Good Friday Agreement, and my cousin Mike says Northern Ireland should be Irish Catholic.
Well,
he and I are Irish Catholics, so there you go. That's that's. But look, I mean, I'll let Ireland settle the Irish question, but we're part of that. I mean, the Good Friday Agreement is something that we brokered, and it was what created the open border, which ended up eliminating all of these militaristic tensions in the 6 counties, right? And for 30 years, that has, well, not quite 30 years, right? 20 something
20
years.
early 2000, early 90s. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to say 98. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
Okay, maybe you're right. 20, 25 years roughly.
23, 24 years. It's worked, right? You haven't had the types of, there's still tension up there, but you haven't had violence. You've had debates, you've had arguments, you've had Stormont not meeting because nobody wants to talk to the other people. There's also
the folks in Dublin told me, why would you go to Northern Ireland? It's they didn't have they couldn't understand why I would want to go there. They had some not so nice things to say about Belfast and people wearing orange, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you have these demonstrations from both sides, the orange and the green. And
what do the folks of the Isle of Man think, though? The 80,000 people that live on the Isle of Man. That's right there on the Irish Sea.
It is. I mean, and I think that's actually part of I think it's part of the UK's.
Right. I'm pointing toward the UK, Ireland, UK.
Yeah. No, Northern Ireland is the only one that's really cut out of this. And what you've got there, what this did, what Johnson ended up having agreed to in order to abide by the Good Friday Agreement was to put that trade border in the Irish Sea. And so what you've got is Northern Ireland being controlled by EU trade policies, which they have now no voice in whatsoever because the UK is not part of the EU. And that's untenable. That's politically untenable. It's not going to work. And eventually what this is going to do is it's going to accelerate reunification on the island. But before you get there, it's going to create a whole lot of violence. And so this is the long way around to, if you're going to appoint somebody to be the envoy to Northern Ireland, they better know what the hell they're doing. Because it's going to take an awful lot of work.
So it should be Kamala Harris. So it should be Kamala Harris.
Okay, should not be Kamala Harris. And unfortunately, George Mitchell is no longer around. And Bill Clinton's just too old.
Hillary's available.
And actually, I think she got offered a job in Ireland, wasn't it? Do I remember that correctly?
I think I saw a headline. Yeah, that she couldn't take the pay cut. I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think she's independently wealthy.
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, now that you mention it, I wouldn't be surprised if Biden did that. If he sent Hillary there as a special envoy. Yeah,
or Chelsea.
But yeah, or Chelsea. Yeah, maybe Chelsea. Who knows? But it shouldn't be somebody who's just there to be a name. This is somebody who really needs to have diplomatic.
Maybe Robert
skills.
F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh God.
He could talk about vaccines and global warming.
About vaccines, yeah, global warming, yeah, exactly. All right. So we got a few minutes left. What haven't we discussed yet?
We're going to discuss some local issues. Well, there's 2 or 3 local issues. There's the GOP chair elections in Minnesota.
Got to talk about that. We got to talk about that. Just because most people who are tuning into this probably don't realize what a shit show the Minnesota GOP actually is. And it is.
Any minority party in any state, the Democrats in Wyoming are a shit show too, and the Republicans in Rhode Island are also, I'm sure. So
probably, yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote an article on Saturday morning. It came out Saturday morning it came out yesterday morning, which is Thursday. The vote is Saturday morning, tomorrow, April 10th, about the Minnesota GOP chairmanship, which is up for grabs, so to speak.
Yep.
It's 2-year term, and the incumbent Jennifer Carnahan is looking for a 3rd term, and she's being challenged by a state senator by the name of Mark Coran, and he's from the suburbs, north side of St. Paul. And Carnahan won last time, but she's and I don't pretend to be totally unbiased, although my news story was supposed to be mostly analysis, but she's struggled. She's made a lot of enemies, and she's also lost every statewide election the GOP has been involved in. They've lost under her term, and that goes back 15 years.
Right. I mean, the last time we won a state, I'm not a Republican anymore, but Pawlenty, 2006, and only barely.
Right. Yeah. And I've been here 8 years. They've won nothing. Now they did pick up two U.S. House seats, one in the Iron Range and one in Western Minnesota, the 7th, very conservative area, only a matter of time, but they did win those. But they lost 2 House seats. We're down in your area, south of the cities, right?
Yep. MN02, yep.
And MN03 in the western suburbs, where Kendall Qualls lost. Well, Eric Paulson lost originally to the current rep, Dean Phillips.
Dean Phillips, yep.
So she promised she would deliver the state for Trump last year. Not only did that not happen, but Biden beat Trump by way more than Hillary did. I don't know if that's Trump's fault, Carnahan's fault. I tend to think Biden is just. I think Hillary was disliked more by more people.
I was trying to tell people this for months.
Yeah.
Trump didn't almost win Minnesota. Hillary Clinton almost lost Minnesota.
Right. Especially up north and out in some of the. But yeah, I think the blue collar Democrats who may have voted for Trump in 2016 didn't. They went to Biden. A lot of them.
It was a large turnout. And actually, Republicans turned out pretty well here, too. I mean, both parties actually turned out really well in this last election. But the reason why Donald Trump came within a point and a half of beating Hillary Clinton here was because 180,000 Democrats didn't show up in 2016. That was the difference.
That's true. That's a good point that people don't realize. But Trump thought he had a chance. He came here 4 or 5 times, as opposed to one time in 2016. And Evan McMullen wasn't on the ballot to take 50-something thousand votes. So a lot of people thought he had a chance. He got endorsed by many Democrat mayors up north, but nonetheless, Biden did better. And Jason Lewis also lost pretty handily to Tina Smith.
And I would say this. I think Biden helped in 7 and 8. I think he generated enthusiasm in 7 and 8 and helped Republicans win those seats.
I see. In the
yeah. But I mean, I don't see that. It wasn't. It was the state being the state, right? This is a blue state. It just is.
It's a blue state in a different way than Rhode Island is or Oregon. Well, maybe not that different from Oregon, but it's a blue state because of how large the Twin Cities are.
Yep.
And Duluth to some degree.
Yep.
In my area, you can drive north and west of here for miles, and it's well, you'd only see Trump signs, but it's 70-80% Republican voters, but the population's not there. I think Biden won not only in the Duluth and the Twin Cities area, but I think he won in Rochester and he won in Mankato and he may have come close to winning in St. Cloud and he won up by Fargo. And Hillary didn't win in those places. That's the difference.
Right.
So anyway, Jennifer Carnahan struggled. She's got a lot of people don't like her. They believe that she has been inept when it comes to finances, that she's bullied people. She's impugned people's reputations. She's just personal attacks, a lot of petty things, even calling people racists. She's a Korean American who grew up in Minnesota.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. I interviewed Mark Koran. It was a good interview. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders. He is running on a pledge to basically, let me get the exact wording, leadership without drama. And a new direction and overhaul, of course, and talking about how these are important years and he wants to bring everyone into the party. We'll see. Only 300 or 400 people vote on these matters, so we'll see what happens. But I personally just think that when you lose and lose and lose, just like in sports, it's time for a managerial change. And then you throw in all the personal aspects that are troubling about Carnahan. I don't think it'd be a good thing for her to get another 2 years.
So let me provide just a tiny bit of balance to this, because I think you're right. That conclusion, I think you're correct. I mean, after a certain amount of time, if you're not really improving things, it's time for a managerial change. I will say this though about Jennifer Carnahan.
Fundraising.
What's that?
She fundraises well, apparently.
She does fundraise well. She also reorganized the party. I mean, the party was a disaster. Now, I forget the man who was just her direct predecessor, who also did a pretty good job of.
I can look it up, but go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
But
Downey?
prior, well, Keith Downey's a good guy anyway. But no, I'm thinking Pat something or other.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you while you're talking. I'll tell you.
But prior to that, the party was a complete disaster. It was so bad they couldn't pay their rent. They were getting kicked out of their offices. This is the other major party in the state, and they can't cover their rent. It was a complete disaster, and they changed. So the leadership changed, and it was this one gentleman, I can't remember his name now, who sort of got it back on the right track. And then Jennifer Carnahan comes in after that.
It says preceded by Keith Downey, Ed. Keith Downey. Yeah.
Who was before Keith Downey?
Before Keith Downey was Pat Shortridge. Pat
Shortridge came in, started the process. Keith Downey came in. Keith was more of a strategist, though. And then, and he's a good guy. Keith is actually a really sharp guy. I've talked to Keith a number of times. He's really good. But Jennifer comes in and she completes this work, or she continues this work of fixing organizing, and she does good work on fundraising. But I think you're right. I mean, in the end, you have to be judged on, what the end result is, and winning is the end result. It's like being an NFL head coach. You might be a brilliant guy.
She had a little, and heck, even Wikipedia mentions some of her issues. I'm not going to read through what they have, but if Wikipedia has it on there, it must have been somewhat important. But she also endorsed Mike Lindell for governor last fall, which what Mark Coran said wasn't the impetus for him to get involved. Not only can you not pre-select candidates, but given Mike Lindell's issues the past 2 or 3, 4, 5 months since the election, that's not a good look. And Carnahan was a little bit into the stop the steal, but after January 6th, she pretty much recanted. But I'll do an article on it no matter who wins tomorrow. The day of the election, and also of a big hockey game, Ed.
There you go. It's Minnesota. You got to talk about hockey. We are out of time, though, but I want to make sure that people know that they can go to alphanews.org. That's the shorter URL, alphanews.org. Great organization. Alpha News is a great organization. It's here in Minnesota, and it's always so much fun talking with AJ because he's just covering such a wide range of stories, both in and out of Minnesota. And so we're going to do this every couple of weeks or so, just sort of touch base with AJ and see what's going on in and out of Minnesota. Glad that you guys could be here with us. AJ, and by the way, their Twitter handle, because AJ's too smart to be on Twitter, their Twitter handle is AlphaNewsMN, right? At AlphaNewsMN still. It
is. And we have a new podcast that has been launched with interviews with some top policy and political leaders that's going to post every Tuesday and Thursday. You can find it on Amazon, Spotify, Apple, everywhere else. Kendall Qualls, former congressional candidate from the 3rd District, was the most recent guest.
Excellent. Well, there you go. Well, AJ, thanks so much for being with us today, and great to have you on, and great to wrap up the week with you here.
Yeah, have a good weekend, Ed. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah, you do the same. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up just really quickly. AJ, you're welcome to hang out and listen to the... I don't think you can actually hear the
I don't hear any music. Music is gone.
Well, wasn't playing yet, but there we go. Just to wrap things up, I'll be back on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central, 1 on the left coast with Andrew Malcolm. I'll probably have a couple of guests there. Wednesday, I'm going to try to do something with Matt Vespa at Town Hall for our VIP Gold Chat since Cam is taking the week off. It might be later in the day. Stay tuned for more on that scheduling. Thursday, of course, back with Dwayne Generalissimo Patterson. And that'll be an awful lot of fun as well. So be sure to stick with us through all of that and stick with us through the weekend. We got lots of great content coming up. I am going to write a review of Inmate #1, The Rise of Danny Trejo. That's what I'm going to do for tomorrow. It is an amazing documentary. If you have not seen it yet, it is inspirational. It is entertaining. The man doesn't make you believe in redemption again. He makes you wonder why you ever stopped believing it in the first place. It is that good. I would highly recommend it to everybody. We just watched it last night. It came out last summer. I hadn't had a chance to see it. I'm going to write a review about that, but that's going to be the gist of the review, so be sure to stick around for that. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to thank everybody for being with us today. Didn't get anybody in the other chat room. I think people may not have remembered it, but that's all right. I want to thank the folks in the Facebook side. My cousin, Mike Morrissey, in the chat room. We've got Charles Clark, who's been very active in the chat room, and my goodness, not too many other people commented, but I know we had viewers over on Facebook, so if you were there, thank you very much for coming by. Great to have you here. Come back on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central, 1 on the left coast. Until then, have yourselves a great afternoon, and don't miss a minute of the Ed Morrissey Show. We'll see you later, folks.